Okay, so this, what we named this is named binary ionic compounds. Okay, so really simple way to describe it. It's binary ionic compounds. Okay, just to kind of review, ionic compound, what's the difference in electronegativities? Is it big or small? Big. Big. Well, the bigger it is, the more ionic character it has. So we did a lab, and you guys had to describe if something was ionic or nonpolar or polar. You guys remember that lab? And you had like elements A through E. You guys remember properties of ionic compounds? What did they have? Really, really high melting point. And that's because the charges are opposite and they're held together. They're kind of glued. You can think of the idea glued. They're really glued together well. Super glue. Versus just like Elmer's, glue. Not so really glued together, have high melting points. When they dissolve, what do? When they dissolve, and you look at they conduct electricity or not, did they conduct electricity? Yes. Because they're ions. Okay, when you got ions in solution, they'll conduct electricity. Okay, so all of these also, if you look at them, they got metals in front. They're all in the metal section. They're all metals. So that's why you can tell it. Usually you can tell if something's ionic if it's a metal-non-metal combination. That's all they are. Okay? What do these end in? You guys remember? What's the ending? I's. So the non-metal always ends in I. The metal's just whatever it is on the periodic table. So you just write it out, whatever it is on the periodic table. So what I'm going to have you do, I've got a couple things for you to do. On this first row of 4, what I'll have you do is I'll have you name it. Okay? And then also, I need you guys write the charges. That, just write it above. So I'll do the first one for you. You can kind of follow along. So look up barium. Find its charge above its symbol. What's barium's charge? +2. Okay? Look up chlorine. Now chlorine's going to wait a second, where did all these numbers come from? Holy cow. How am I going to figure that one out? There's no way. You always pick the last one. So you always look at the last charge listed in that row of charges. And that's the one you'll always write down. Does that make sense? So just block out all the others. Look at the last one listed and write down its charge. And then just name it. So go ahead and I won't name that one. You can name it. Do that for the first 4. And then we'll see if you got the charges right and if you got the names right. Okay, so go ahead and do that. That won't be too difficult for you to do. So it should go in this order on charges. We'll do those first. +2, -2, +1, -2, +1, -1. Questions? Anybody not get those down? So all you're doing is looking them up. Next thing, you named them. So this was barium chloride. This was cadmium oxide. This was lithium sulfide. And this is silver. This one's kind of... Now, the oxygen becomes oxide. It's usually they're 2 syllables when you do it. You do enough of these that you won't have to worry about. And this would be iodide. So it's like iodine. You take the iene off and you make it iodide. Sulfur you take the UR off, sulfide. Oxygen, you take the Gen off, and you mix it oxide. Okay? Questions? Pretty easy? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, we're going to do another pattern type of thing, because we're going to take, okay, like, I get the name, but these charges are like, how do they figure out what, the charges out? So what I want you to do is, I want you to just take a couple minutes, these 4 examples, which isn't a lot. I just want you to go ahead and look at the examples and try to figure out how they decide if it has a subscript or if there's no subscripts in any of the formula. So I just want you to look at that, and then maybe we can come up with some commonalities on those that have subscripts versus those that don't have subscripts, and then why is it, for example, a 2 subscript?
What's a subscript?
These are subscripts. Okay? So you can go ahead, take a couple minutes. You guys can talk around with people around you. Maybe you guys have some things you can share, and then we'll see what you have shared. I think if I let you go too much longer, though, you will be discussing this. So, what do you think?
When they even like it's +1, -1, there's no sign. But if it's like +1, -2,
Right. So if they're the same value but just opposite, then you don't need subscripts. Does that make sense? Okay. So like this one here, when they're the same and opposite, you don't need subscripts. So why do you need it? Why is lithium have to have a subscript of 2, for example?
So it equals 0.
Yep. So when he says equals 0, that means when you take this -2 charge and you add it to the plus charge over here, that equals 0. So right now, if you just had 1 lithium, it wouldn't equal 0, right? But since this 2 is down here, it says you've got 2 of these. And if I have 2 of them, what's the charge of the total charge that lithium gives to the compound? What's its total positive charge? 2. That's a multiplier. That's a multiplier, and it multiplies your charge so that it equals. So if I multiply this by 2, then that equals 0. Okay? So the same goes here. What I usually do is I put it in parentheses, and then like math, if I put a 2 on the outside, that means I've got that 2 multiplies through that charge, and then when I add them together, when I add those 2 up, +2 plus a -2, that equals 0. So all of them equal 0. They all have to equal 0 when you're done. Make sense? That's how you know. We won't have you guys do subscripts today because we're just going to ease into this. This is the same. This is the same for everything that's ionic. The charges have to equal 0. All ionic compounds, once you put them together, they're subscripts. If you have to have subscripts, that you're using a subscript so that the charges equal 0 when you add them all up. Okay? So I'm going to have you do those next 5 really quick. Go ahead and do the name now for these bottom 2. All right, for these bottom 2, when you look them up, they're going to have multiple positive charges. So list out all the positive charges that are listed out for them. Most of them that we've done have just 1 charge. But these bottom 2 will have multiple charges. So go ahead and write all the charges out for iron and chromium once you get to those 2. Okay, this is should be pretty easy stuff. You're learning a couple skills. What you're learning is how to name them, which is really super easy because all you have to do is change the ending. And you're learning a little bit about the charge and the subscripts. So this is plus 3, minus 3, plus 2, minus 3, plus 1, minus 2. Now this one could be a plus 2 or a plus 3. And this one's going to be a plus 2, plus 3, or plus 6. It's kind of like a multiple choice. You got to figure out which one of those is going to be. The first one you got a 50% chance. The second one you have a 30 whatever percent chance. And neither one of them are really good if you're guessing. Okay? It's not very good to guess. So we don't want to guess at those. This is a minus 1 and then this is a minus 2.
Should you put all three of those down for the...
I just do right now. Because I want to show you how to figure out which one it is.
Well, we'd only put the one that corresponds to it.
Eventually, you're going to have to pick out the one that corresponds to that element. Yeah. Eventually, you're going to have to figure out which one it is.
I thought we always just picked the last one.
Okay? So that's on the ones that are negative. Okay? So now we're going to look at the ones that are positive, and if they're positive, a lot of times there's just one listed.
Yeah.
So you don't have to pick. If there's multiple ones listed, okay, that are positive, then we're going to have to figure out which one it is. Okay? So this first one is scandium nitride. Did you guys get that one right? Scandium nitride. And then this is magnesium phosphide. Not phosphoride. Phosphide. Most of these are two syllables. This one will be a free syllable because that's the only way we do it. Cesium selenide. Any questions on those first three? Now, do you notice these are different than the first 7 we did? These two are different. Okay, did you ever watch Sesame Street and they give you like, which one of these are the same and which one's different? You ever do that? Okay? These are different. We've got to name them differently. Do they still end in IDE? Yes. Okay? If you notice over here, we have a 2 and a 1. So now these Roman numerals come into play. So have you guys ever, in history class, studied individuals where Roman numerals were used?
Mm-hmm.
In what way?
Names.
Names. Like, why would they use Roman numerals for names? Well, did they have the same
Like Chester McGurry.
last
McGurry
name?
the Fourth.
What's that?
Like Chester McGurry the Fourth. They have the same exact name.
Okay. So the way to differentiate who it is, sometimes you can use junior or senior. There they use popes would be Roman numerals, kings, Roman numerals, King George. Which King's George? Okay. Well, the good king, well, he was King George or whatever. The bad king was. So that's why they use Roman numerals here. They're differentiating between which one it is. So, okay. So this first one, does anybody have a guess what Roman numeral we'll use for the first one? This 3. Okay. So let's see. Why a 3? So they're saying this should be the charge of it. Let me see why it's the charge.
Because it has 3 on the end of it.
Because it has a 3 subscript, and if I take that 3 and multiply it by this -1, it gives me a charge of a -3. Iron, I got one of them. What charge does iron have to be?
3.
It has to be a +3. So you would say iron 3 fluoride. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's what happens. Students think the Roman numeral stands for how many irons we have. And in that case, students that would do this wrong would say iron 1 fluoride. And I'd go, check. Wrong. Because the Roman numeral only stands for what? the charge of that iron. I've got to state the charge. 2 or 3. So then, this one is what name? What is the name of FeF2?
Iron 2.
Iron 2. They have different properties, different characteristics. So this is a -1, and I got a choice of a +2 or a +3. I got 2 of those. I got to match up the charge. That's the 2. So that would be iron 2. So the questions?
Does only iron have the Roman numeral?
No. The ones, now when you look these up, you notice that they had multiple positive charges, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to show Roman numerals for all of those.
So like even gold, it's +1, +2.
Right. What about zinc? Would you have to use a Roman numeral for zinc?
No.
No. How about cadmium?
Oh boy, now I gotta find out.
No.
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 Okay.
No. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have. That's the most common missed problem on tests is people don't use Roman numerals. And then they actually figure them out wrong too. So the next one, what would be the Roman numeral for that one? It's a 2. Okay, because this is a -2, there's no subscript, so it's straight at -2. So it should be chromium 2 oxide. So now, after the first 2 days of school for the new semester, you know how to name binary ionic. And then if it has multiple charges, you should be able to figure out the charge. Okay, so what I'd like you to, let's kind of go back up to this one, because this one's kind of unique. Does everybody see why there's a 3 subscript here?
There's a -3 here.
Okay? So here's the deal. If you have a +2 and a -3 hooked together, this is the most difficult one you have to do, which isn't very difficult. You have to find a common charge you can get both of those to equal so they can cancel out. So like when you add 1/3 plus 1/2, what's the common denominator you have to have? 6. When you have, same idea, a +2 and a -3, you got to get them both to 6. So that's why you need 3 magnesiums and 2 phosphorus. That's going to come into play a lot tomorrow when we have to do that a little bit more. So for tomorrow, you're going to write these down and do these. You're going to write the name down and then put the charges above. Remember, if they have multiple charges, you have to pick out the charge, and that's your Roman numeral.
Are we training the same?
No.
Okay.
I will look to see if you have it completed. This is a completion grade. So if you didn't have me last semester, every once in a while we have these completion assignments, and I'll come around. You have to have them all done, completed to get credit. And then I'll check you off, and you get an automatic 5, 10 points. Okay? So this is, just put it in your notes, and you'll be on your way to naming and writing, actually naming formulas because we haven't written too many out. We'll do that tomorrow.
And all of these will still be